this link, it's in the chat here, and I think on Facebook. So I've just uploaded the same document basically from yesterday, but I added some of the verses that His Holiness has been, that His Holiness cited today, the ones I could find. So I'll try to emphasize some of those, and then His Holiness went through a lot of verses of the root text in Praise of Dependent Origination by Tsongkhapa today. So we'll try to go through those just briefly, and then I'll try to leave at least half the time, more than yesterday, for your questions. Okay, so again, His Holiness kind of divided the talk into a general introduction, and then something, and then commentary on the actual text, and then question and answer. So the general introduction, this is so His Holiness first emphasized something that's really important to know. If you consider yourself a follower of His Holiness Dalai Lama or a student of His Holiness, then it's like the way His Holiness always summarizes Buddhist teachings is into the behavior or the practice of nonviolence, and then the view of dependent origination. So, His Holiness always says the essence of all of Buddhist teachings, you can summarize into two things: the view and the practice, or the behavior. So the view is the view of dependent arising, and His Holiness added now that has more to do with science and a scientific kind of approach, a scientific kind of understanding, and it's very amenable with the dialogue with modern science, and seeing how Buddhism fits with modern science, or is harmonious with modern science. And then the behavior, the behavior of non-violence, which of course includes loving kindness and compassion, and that has more to do with achieving peace and happiness in the world, for all beings in the world. So His Holiness emphasized those two things. And then, so then His Holiness spoke about, to kind of reify that, or support that further, His Holiness spoke about this verse that I don't hear His Holiness quote usually, but luckily I was able to find it because anyway, I'm studying the Buddha's biography right now, the life story. So this is the verse that the Buddha spoke, the first verse that Shakyamuni Buddha spoke after he achieved enlightenment, and it's found in the Lalita Vistara Sutra. So here I'm sharing with you my my screen of the document that I just uploaded today. So it's the same document as yesterday, but I added here day 2 and then verses that His Holiness quoted today. So this verse here is what I'm talking about. It's the first verse His Holiness cited, and he gave quite a lot of commentary on this verse. So I'll just try to summarize. So it says, this ambrosial Dharma I've attained is profound, peaceful, free of elaborations, luminous and unconditioned. Even if I explained it, no one will understand. I think I shall remain silent in the forest. So, many of you have heard that, after the Buddha achieved enlightenment and arose from the meditative concentration during which he achieved enlightenment, then he thought, reflecting on what he'd attained, what he'd realized, what he had achieved, and the essence of it, the meaning of it, then he kind of thought that, well, he showed the aspect. Remember, this is all, the Buddha is actually enlightened a long time ago, and he's showing the aspect of achieving enlightenment in this world. And he showed the aspect of thinking, even if I explain this to others, no one will understand it. So maybe I'll just remain quiet in the forest by myself. But here His Holiness is explaining that that this verse, the way His Holiness understands it, it kind of shows the essence of all of Buddha's teachings and is a precursor to, the Buddha actually giving his first formal teaching on the Four Noble Truths, by showing especially the nature of what he had achieved, right? This ambrosial Dharma, or means the truth, the spiritual realization that he attained or achieved or won, is profound in that it's very deep, and it's peaceful in that it's completely free of anything that would be disturbing to the mind, right, to the peace of the mind. So these two things, it's profound and peaceful, especially show the truth of cessation, right? These are qualities of the truth of cessation. A peaceful being completely, because the truth of cessation is the complete elimination of suffering and the causes of suffering, therefore peaceful. And that one achieves that elimination through meditation on emptiness, which is the profound truth, the ultimate reality. So this kind of shows the truth of the path. And then free of elaborations, also remember yesterday we spoke about elaborations always are usually refers to the projection of ignorance, the projection of inherent existence on things. So that the nature of all things, again, is free of elaboration. And then here, luminous of the mind, which realizes emptiness. So the clear light nature of the most subtle level of the mind is luminous in that it realizes objects, and it's unconditioned in that it's had that quality of being naturally free from all afflictions, afflictive emotions, and the causes of those from beginningless time. So this state of our mind now, in that we have ignorance, and because of that we have afflictive emotions like anger and attachment and so forth, that is a temporary state based on adventitious conditions, and eventually we can be free from that. So the nature of our mind is luminous and free of, and ultimately it's free from anything that is impairs the ability of the mind to know. So on the basis of this, then His Holiness gave quite an explanation. I mean, it's quite a little complicated, but about the three bodies of a Buddha, and the inseparability of the three bodies of a Buddha, which has to do with Tantra. So basically, I mean, the Tantric path is largely about transforming ordinary death, intermediate state, and rebirth into the three bodies of the Buddha, right? So the state of death is transformed into the Choku, the truth body of the Buddha, which is for the Buddha's own purpose, which means on the one hand, the Buddha's emptiness and inherent existence, which has to do with emptiness. And on the other hand, the Buddha's mind stream being completely free from any taints, which has to do with this luminous and unconditioned. So there's that. And then, so that's the body for others, the truth body, is because, no, it's the body for oneself, because it doesn't appear to other sentient beings, it only appears to the Buddha themselves, right, the Buddha themselves. And then there's the form body, right, which has two parts, the enjoyment body and the emanation body. So those appear to other sentient beings. The enjoyment body appears to other bodhisattvas, to high-level bodhisattvas, and the emanation body appears to ordinary sentient beings like us. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama, in our view, would be, I mean, if we have faith, then he's an emanation body of the Buddha of compassion, of Lokiteshvara. So, yeah, so this verse kind of, it touches on all of those things. And so there's a union of these three bodies, the truth body, the emanation body, and the enjoyment body, that those three are actually inseparable, like in the way that like emptiness and the mind, which is empty of inherent existence. You could say the mind, the Buddha's enlightened mind, and the emptiness of inherent existence of that mind are inseparable, but also that mind is conjoined with or inseparable from a subtle wind energy, which is it's through the force of that mind and that subtle wind energy, that wind energy appears as the enjoyment body and the emanation body. So emptiness, so the Buddha's holy mind, and then the emptiness of that mind, and then the subtle wind that goes along with it. Those three are inseparable. And those three appear as the three bodies of a Buddha, right? The truth body, enjoyment body, and emanation body. And then His Holiness went into how, so then the Buddha, in order to benefit beings, then he gave the first teaching. So I'll show me again here. He gave his first teachings in Sarnath, the teachings of the Four Noble Truths. And now that teaching of the Four Noble Truths is a basis through all of his other teachings. And then, so it's because His Holiness spoke quite a lot about the Four Noble Truths yesterday, he spoke more about the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma today. And especially how in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, then the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, which is the basis for everything. In the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, the Buddha, well, he taught that everything is inherently existent, actually, because the audience for that turning of the wheel of Dharma, they would not be able to bear to hear, or they would not be able to understand, and it would cause fear to arise in them if the Buddha were to have taught them that nothing inherently exists, right? So the Buddha, for that audience, he taught everything inherently exists, which of course is not true, right? So then in the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, then the Buddha taught the ultimate view of reality, which is that nothing inherently exists. So it's totally opposite to what he taught in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma. So the second turn of the wheel of Dharma was taught at Vulture's Peak in Rajgir, and it's contained in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, such as the Heart Sutra and others, the Vajrayana Sutra and others. So in this verse, so His Holiness is relating at this time, when he's explaining everything back to this verse that the Buddha first spoke. So in this verse, when the Buddha speaks about, free of elaborations, that means, emptiness, basically, that everything is empty of inherent existence. That is the main thing the Buddha taught in the second turning of the wheel of Dharma. So in this first of the second line, the profound and peaceful, which is referring mostly to the truth of cessation, is kind of like, referring to the Four Noble Truths, and especially, as the Buddha taught in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, that because suffering arises in dependence upon causes, and the root of those causes is a fundamental misunderstanding, ignorance. Therefore, it's possible to eliminate all suffering and the causes of suffering, right? Because their very root, ignorance, is unstable. It's an invalid mind, or an incorrectly apprehending mind, and therefore it can be eliminated, right? Just like if we think that, the earth is flat, then if we study about the geography and the shape of the earth, we can come to understand that the earth is actually round and dispel that notion that the earth is flat. Or like, before, when people thought that the sun revolves around the earth, that the sun revolves around the earth, and the earth is in the center of the universe. But then, I think, was it Kepler? Maybe Galileo, they made astronomers made very close observations of the movement of the sun and the stars. And they came to discover that actually it's the earth that revolves around the sun. It's not that the sun revolves around the earth. So that earlier misconception that the sun revolves around the earth was totally dispelled. And by understanding the truth of that, then that misconception will never return, right? Once you really understand the truth of the truth. So in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, the Buddha taught the truth of cessation. And then the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, the Buddha taught actually how to achieve the truth of cessation by meditating on lack of inherent existence. And then here we come to the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, where the Buddha taught the nature of the mind which achieves enlightenment, and the nature of the mind which meditates on emptiness, and why that mind can be totally freed from all misconceptions and ignorance. Why? Because the nature of that mind is that which is merely clear and knowing. It's luminous, and its nature of being, free from any impurities or free from any obscurations to knowledge is unconditioned, in the sense that that's always been its nature from beginningless time until now. So this has this third part, luminous and unconditioned. Here, His Holiness spoke about. It has a lot to do with Dzogchen in the Nyingma school, and also in the Gelug school, the highest Yoga Tantra view of the person's nature being kind of like our nature is kind of, well, it's like being enlightened. It's like we have an enlightened nature, although, there's different ways to interpret it, but it's not fully developed now. But that potential for our enlightenment is present within us, and it has always been and will always be, can never be destroyed. Okay, so His Holiness spoke a lot about that first verse, and then His Holiness shifted gears and talked more about Tibetan Buddhism. What's unique about Tibetan Buddhism is that it puts a lot of emphasis on valid cognition and studying the text by Dignaga and Dharmakirti, and because Buddhism, I mean the Nalanda tradition of Buddhism of ancient India was introduced into Tibet by Shantarakshita, who was one of the last great abbots and scholars of ancient Nalanda University. And Shantarakshita was a great scholar of pramana, or valid cognition. So, and he's composed some really good text on valid cognition. So he emphasized that. So right from the introduction of Buddhism into Tibet, there's an emphasis on valid cognition and using logic and reason to prove everything that the Buddha taught, right? And as a key or a tool to understand Buddha's teachings based not just on citing from sutras and believing whatever the Buddha taught at face value because he's the Buddha and he taught it, but rather understanding what the Buddha taught in terms of critical analysis. Does it really make sense? Is it logical? Is it internally non-contradictory? How do we deal with apparent contradictions? So His Holiness always emphasizes this point that that this is something unique about Tibetan Buddhism, because you look at other traditions of Buddhism in the world, in China, in Thailand, Sri Lanka, other Buddhist countries, you don't see, on the one hand, you don't see this emphasis on the ancient Nalanda treatise on valid cognition by Dignaga and Dharmakirti. Maybe they weren't translated in Chinese. In the Pali Canon, they don't accept those as being based on the word of the Buddha because they don't accept the Sanskrit tradition of Buddhism as authentic for the most part. And even if they don't study those treaties, right? So they don't use them. And also they don't have debate, right? So you don't see debate. If you go to monasteries in China or Burma, Thailand, and Korea and so forth, you don't see monks debating and using this kind of, it's basically like Platonic dialogue, using reasoning to investigate the Buddhist teachings. And so this is something really unique to Tibetan Buddhism, which is of course inherited from India. This thing of debate was developed largely or this kind of formalization of how to do debate was developed by Chapa Choki Senge, which is a Tibetan scholar. And let's see. So this way of approaching Buddha's teachings and explaining Buddha's teachings in a way that's completely logical makes it very easy for this kind of tradition of Buddhism to have dialogue with science, right, with modern science, and to kind of make comparisons with and engage in dialogue with science. Yeah, leave it at that. And then let's see. His Holiness talked a lot about one Chinese pilgrim who seemed to be a student of Nagarjuna. And then in the 5 main topics, classical topics of Buddhist philosophy that we study. So this is the perfections, the middle way, cosmology, basically, or called Abhidharma, and then Vinaya, or monastic discipline, and then Pramana. For Pramana mostly relates to the perfections and the middle way, right? So those two you debate a lot. Vinaya and Abhidharma you don't debate so much. So it's the same. And then His Holiness was talking about, that's why, for this reason, that the Tibetan tradition of Buddhism, which is an extension of ancient Nalanda, it's the only Buddhist tradition in the world that really upholds the study and use of valid cognition in practice. That's one reason it's important to uphold Tibetan culture now. So even though in Chinese occupied Tibet now, then there's no freedom to study in the traditional way and to practice in the traditional way. So His Holiness was saying that it's fallen upon, you know, the responsibility of the three great seats, Sera Jey and Ganden, as reestablished in South India, where I am now, actually where there's no power, but to uphold this tradition of study. And then also he talked a lot about the Himalayan peoples. Now in different regions of the Himalayas, such as Ladakh, Sikkim, Nepal, Arunachal Pradesh, they are also more and more taking responsibility to uphold this tradition. And then His Holiness quoted from, and then His Holiness makes this kind of joke about the Pali tradition, that sometimes he teases his Pali, his friends, monastic friends in the Pali tradition, that it's like they're like an old man eating food without teeth, because they don't make use of the tradition of the Buddhist treatise on logic and valid cognition. Then when they find inconsistencies in the Buddhist teachings, they have a difficult time making sense of that, because in order to establish things as true, they mostly just quote directly from sutras and leave it at that without really doing critical analysis. So he's saying, whereas in the Tibetan tradition, it's like they have this tool of critical analysis based on logic in order to sort out how to interpret different aspects of the Buddhist teachings, and therefore they can make sense of it, and they can also feel very confident in engaging with dialogue with modern science, and also in reinterpreting Buddhist teachings to fit with a modern scientific understanding, right? Because the basis for science and Buddhism is the same. It's logic and reasoning. And then His Holiness, as he often makes the point about the importance of the Tibetan language, because the Tibetan language, and especially the written alphabet, is based on Sanskrit. The spoken Tibetan language is not based on Sanskrit, but the written Tibetan language is based on Sanskrit, and a whole vocabulary of Dharma terminology was developed specifically in order to translate the sutras and tantras and ancient Indian commentaries from Sanskrit into Tibetan. So it's very easy to study and very accurate to study and contemplate the Buddhist teachings through the medium of Tibetan language. So for that reason, it's very important that, you know, Tibetan language is preserved. And then His Holiness spoke about in the future, because there's many Buddhists in China, and many of them more and more recognize the importance and the unique qualities of the Tibetan tradition of Buddhism, that he hopes that more and more Chinese will take interest in studying Buddhism and continue this patron-priest relationship from the past. And then His Holiness made the point that, you know, the Tibetans over hundreds of years put so much effort into translating the sutras and tantras and ancient Indian commentaries on those. So the sutras and tantras are contained in the Kangyur, means the translated word of the Buddha. And then the ancient Indian commentaries by Nagarjuna and Shantideva and so forth are contained in the Tengyur, which means the translated commentaries of Buddhism. So His Holiness always emphasizes, and emphasizes now, that it's important not just to, you know, put those on the shelf. Usually in people's homes or in temples, in monasteries, like in Tushita even, you see the Kangyur and Tengyur on these very fancy, like, you know, elaborate shelves behind the Buddha statues, but nobody goes and pulls those books down and reads them, because most people don't feel confident they'll be able to understand what's there, or they're too busy, or stuff like that. So His Holiness emphasized it's not enough just to put those books up on the shelf and, you know, make offerings to them and pray to them and use them in pujas and stuff. We need to open them up and read them, right, and study them. So yeah. Then His Holiness spoke a little bit more about Lama Tsongkhapa. You know, so now he's explaining the text. First, I think His Holiness quoted another couple of verses before he started explaining our text for today. So he quoted this verse by Dignaga. To you, so this is the first two lines of a verse of homage to the Buddha at the beginning of Dignaga's text on valid cognition. Dignaga's main text on valid cognition. His Holiness spoke, you might remember, he told there's this nice story about how Manjushri, all right, so back to me. There's this nice story about how Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom, told Dignaga to write this text on logic, right, and valid cognition. So Dignaga would, well, yeah, I don't have time to tell the story, but basically Dignaga would start to compose some verses of this text he had in mind on like a black slate, and then he would go to beg for food, and then he'd come back and someone had erased it, and this happened several times. And then he wrote, whoever's erasing my treatise here, I challenge you to a debate. So then this Tirtika who had been erasing it then came and they debated, and in logic, in debate, Dignaga defeated him, but the Tirtika didn't accept. He was very arrogant. He didn't want to accept defeat. So he shot out, like through his kind of miraculous powers, he shot out like a flame from his mouth and burned Dignaga's hair. And Dignaga felt so upset. He thought, okay, I've had it with these people. Forget it. I'm just going to not write this treatise. It's too much hassle. And what these kind of people, they're not going to understand it anyway. So just forget it. And then so Dignaga took his slate and threw it up in the air and decided, when it drops to the ground, then I'm going to just, renounce trying to benefit these difficult sentient beings. So he threw it up in the air, and then he listened for it to drop, and he listened and listened, and it didn't drop. And then he looked up in the air and he sees Manjushri, and Manjushri's there. Manjushri's there holding the slate and tells Dignaga, be patient, basically. Yes, there are difficult people like this, but you have to be patient. Don't give up working for the benefit of sentient beings. And if you compose this treatise on logic and valid cognition, it will be like the eyes of the world in the future. It will be a great benefit to people. So, yeah. So then I'll share my screen again. So the first lines of homage to the Buddha that Dignaga composes are this: to you who has become a valid being and wishes to benefit migrators, the teacher, the one gone beyond, the protector, I pay homage. All right, so there's a very elaborate explanation, actually, of this verse. Actually, the whole second chapter of Dharmakirti's commentary on Dignaga's Compendium of Valid Cognition is basically about these two lines, right? So there's a very elaborate commentary of those two lines, basically explaining the qualities of the Buddha. So again, think about the three bodies of the Buddha I mentioned earlier, and the Buddha's the truth body being for the Buddha's own purpose, which is basically it's the truth of cessation, and then the form bodies, which appear to other sentient beings to directly benefit them. So being the bodies for the benefit of others. That so those yeah. Anyway, there's different aspects of the qualities of the Buddha's body. His compassion, his wisdom, his having achieved the truth of cessation, and accumulation of merit and so forth, which those two lines show, right? But what's important before we get too far away from that story is that, at the beginning of Tsongkhapa's career, as Tsongkhapa was coming into his own as a scholar, at the end of his period of study, as a young man, then one of these questions he posed to that he had himself, and he posed to other scholars of Tibet at that time, was, many people in Tibet, and maybe even in ancient India, they thought that the Buddhist treatises on valid cognition by Dharmakirti and Dignaga are mostly for the purpose of refuting the wrong views of non-Buddhists. But for Buddhist practitioners, they're not especially useful or especially helpful. Right? So many people have this view that the Buddhist treatises on valid cognition are not really relevant to one's own practice of the Lamrim, one's own meditation practice, but they're more for refuting wrong views of non-Buddhists. Whereas in this story, where Manjushri tells Dignaga to compose his compendium on valid cognition, Manjushri says in the future, this treatise will be like the eyes of the world, helping people to understand Buddhist teachings. So it's totally contradictory to accept that Manjushri told Dignaga to write this treatise on valid cognition in order to benefit the world, and having the view that, you know, those treaties on valid cognition don't actually benefit one's practice. So there's a contradiction there, and Tsongkhapa was, and therefore Tsongkhapa, you know, he emphasized in his own practice and his own teachings the importance of unifying the Buddhist logic with especially the view of emptiness, right, and the middle way, teachings on the middle way. And then His Holiness quoted this other verse. I don't remember the context exactly, but it's by Chandrakirti. It says, "Thus, illuminated by the rays of wisdom's light, the Bodhisattva sees as clearly as a gooseberry in his open palm that the three realms in their entirety are unborn from the very start, and through the force of conventional truth, he journeys to cessation." Yeah, so this mentions again about, you know, thus illuminated by the rays of wisdom's light. So emphasizing using wisdom, right, using logic and reason to understand the path, thereby understanding. The Bodhisattva sees as clearly as a gooseberry in the palm of his hand. So it sees as clearly as, you know, as you look, if you had something in the palm of your hand, as you would, you know, you would have no doubt that it's there, right? It's your understanding of that is irreversible. Just like that, then the Bodhisattvas see that the three realms and their entirety are unborn from the very start. So here, unborn means not inherently existing, right? Not inherently produced from the very start. Rather, they're dependent arisings. And to the force, so that's ultimate truth. And then to the force of conventional truth, meaning compassion, their great compassion, then they journey to cessation of full enlightenment. Right? So that's one of the last verses from the 6th chapter of Chandrakirti's Entering the Middle Way. Okay, so then His Holiness turned to explaining Lama Tsongkhapa's In Praise of Dependent Origination. So again, I'll share my screen and just, come on, I'm not sharing. Just go through some of the verses very quickly. So His Holiness started today from verse 9. It says, "To help heal sentient beings, O benefactor, you have taught the peerless reason to ascertain emptiness," the heart of the teachings, right? So the peerless reason to ascertain emptiness is the reason of dependent origination, right? So you can think about it like this. There's this syllogism. Say, all phenomena, or the subject, all things that exist, are empty of inherent existence. Why? Because they are dependently arising. Right? So there's a subject, the predicate, and the reason. So the subject, all phenomena, or everything that exists. Then the predicate, they are empty of inherent existence. Why? And then the sign or the reason, because they are dependently arising, or dependently originated phenomena. So that reason of dependent arising is the peerless reason to ascertain emptiness. It is the heart of the teaching. And then 10, this way of dependent origination, those who perceive it as contradictory and as unestablished, how can they comprehend your system? So those people who see that, they think they see this reason as being contradictory. So they see the sign and the predicate as being contradictory. They think if something is dependent arising, it is necessarily not empty of inherent existence, but rather it must inherently exist. So this applies to the lower Buddhist tenet systems of the Great Exposition School, the Sutra School, the Mind-Only School, and the Middle Way Autonomous School. They think that if things are dependent arising, they must inherently exist. So they see the sign and the predicate and the sign as contradictory. And those who see it as unestablished are the non-Buddhists. They think that things are actually not dependent arising. Rather, they have their own intrinsic existence, and that means they're not dependent arisings. How can they comprehend your system? For you, when one sees emptiness, in terms of the meaning of dependent origination, then being devoid of intrinsic existence and possessing valid functions do not contradict. So yeah, I don't have time to explain every verse, but rather, yeah, maybe it's even take up too much time to read through the verses. So why don't I just go to your questions, right? And then see what you guys want me to explain, I'll explain, right? Let's do it like that. All right, I have to figure out how to.
Venerable Legtsok,
So,
there's no questions so far.
really?
Does anyone has any questions? We can unmute you. Please put your hands up and then we can unmute you. Anybody has questions?
Hello.
And people watching from Facebook, you can post your question on the comment box and then we can take it forward.
Okay. I can hear you.
So, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So, His Holiness, when he was talking about the third turning of the wheel, and he was talking about that the three kayas, he mentioned that it's the Shentong view.
Yeah.
What was he talking about there?
Yeah. So I just watched again this afternoon because I didn't get it the first time either. Basically, according to the Jonangba, this Shendong Rangtong. So it means Shendong, Shen means other, and Dong means empty. So it means empty of other, and Rangtong, Rang means self. So Rangtong means self empty, Shendong means other empty. So, and it's basically mostly a tenet of the Jonangpa school, but in part, maybe it's shared by some in the Nyingma Kagyu also. So His Holiness was saying, His Holiness, I never heard this before. His Holiness gave his own kind of interpretation of what he thinks it actually means. And so he was saying that, okay, so relating to the three bodies of the Buddha, I think the Buddha's mind, that the Buddha's mind is empty of inherent existence, right? Well, like I explain it like this will be easier. So there's two different qualities of the Buddha's mind. One, it's empty of inherent existence. That's its ultimate nature. And then as part of its conventional nature is the enlightened mind is free from all the obscurations that it had before, when he was a sentient being, right? So free from the afflictive obscurations and free from the knowledge obscurations. So it's abandoned all of those, right? So the first, the Buddha's mind being empty of inherent existence is His Holiness said he thinks that's what Rangtong means, self-empty.
Okay.
Right? That the Buddha's mind, its nature from beginningless time until now, until as long as time exists, it's always been empty of inherent existence, and that's just a inherent property, or inherent, we don't want to use the word inherent, but it's a natural property of anyone's mind, right? All of our minds are empty of inherent existence, and our minds and the Buddha's mind are the same in that way. They're empty of inherent existence. So that is the self-empty. Whereas the Buddha's mind, whereas for us, we have afflictive obscurations. We have anger and attachment. We have imprints of karma and so forth. And we have the knowledge obscurations, which prevent us from achieving enlightenment. Whereas the Buddha's mind, has completely purified all of these obscurations, abandoned all objects of abandonment, right? So that emptiness of obscurations is other empty.
Okay.
Right? Why? Because it's empty of something that has a different nature, right? It's like, it's like my mugs being empty of inherent existence is a natural quality of the mug. Whereas my mugs being empty of apple juice, the apple juice is something other than the mug, in a conventional way. So its emptiness of apple juice would be like its other empty. Its emptiness of inherent existence is like its own empty.
Okay. So that doesn't mean that it affirms anything. Does
What,
it?
emptiness?
No. That somehow the Buddha's mind has some quality because of, you know, that it's luminous nature, that it's empty of everything other than this nature. So it doesn't have anything to do with that. It's just empty of the obscurations. It's not affirming anything.
Well, it is kind of, I mean, well, it is kind of affirming something, right? So, I mean, it's affirming that it's possible, you know, that all sentient beings' minds, it's possible that they can be free of those obscurations, right? That those obscurations have never been, are not, will never be of one nature with the mind. So that's what, when you look at the luminous nature of the mind, it has to do with that the mind is by nature pure. There's this natural purity, right? So that's, and there's a lot of, you know, in Dzogchen and the Nyingma approach to, you know, presenting Buddhist teachings, there's much more emphasis on that aspect, you know, that natural purity of our minds.
Okay. Okay.
So, but there's a difference between that. I mean, that's kind of a logical follow-on. There's a difference between that and just saying, you know, the Buddha's emptiness, the Buddha's mind's being, what is it? The Buddha's mind being free from obscurations. Is that a non-affirming negation or is it an affirming negation?
Yeah.
Right? That's slightly different. I mean, to really look at something, if something is an affirming negation or a non-affirming negation, you have to make a very precise statement or have a very precise thought, and then look at that specific thought or that specific statement. Is it affirming something, you know, either directly or indirectly or not? You know, that's a slightly different question. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Is there another question?
Yes, Venerable, there is a question from Tracer's iPhone. So Tracer's iPhone, we are unmuting you. You can ask your question.
Okay.
Hello, thank you for your time and such amazing insight to what His Holiness was saying. My question was, you know, when you were telling the story of how Manjushri was facing these challenges and he was not, his treaty was not getting accepted, you know, in this, you'd mentioned that, right?
Dignaga was facing these challenges. Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
So,
Dignaga, yeah.
in the situation where you are trying to set forward healthy, organic ways to not just make your life better, but also make the life of your organization as a team leader better. And there is acceptance of you as the team leader, but at the same time there is complete resistance to accepting the ways for benefiting self, each other, and the organization. So in the modern times, what does one do to be able to maybe break through or convince, or, you know?
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah, I mean,
there's a storm here. I'm so sorry.
No, it's yeah, it's monsoon here too. Yeah. No, you're audible. I can hear you. So, yeah, I mean, this is not only a modern problem. I mean, this problem has existed since time immemorial. I mean, the first thing is you have to never give up hope. You know, always keep trying, because that's the right thing to do. No matter what other people think and no matter what kind of results you get in the short term, it's important to have clear in your own mind what you think is right, what you think is good, and also to have, you know, the pure motivation to benefit others and to benefit the world, and then just keep trying. So of course, I mean, it is one of the most frustrating things when we really think something, you know, we really want to help our team, our family, our society. We really are trying to, you know, encourage them to change in a way that we think will be helpful to them. and people don't want to change. I mean, people have a resistance to change. I mean, because they feel safe with what they know, and because, you know, if they have power in the situation that exists, they don't want to give up their power. So, so it's important to, instead of getting frustrated with people and getting irritated, angry, to really have compassion that, you know, partly people don't want to change because of selfishness. You know, they're thinking more about what they want themselves and not thinking about others and what's beneficial. Partly people don't want to change because of fear, right? So when you see that other people are selfish and you realize selfishness is the cause of suffering, then you should have compassion for them instead of getting irritated that they're being selfish. If people don't want to change because they're afraid, because they don't know how things will turn out, and so they want the status quo, then you should have compassion for them being afraid, because their own fear is crippling them, right? And blinding them to the possibilities that exist. So again, instead of becoming irritated with them, be compassionate, right? Have compassion for them. And then also, maybe people don't want to change because they really don't understand why they should, right? Because they really just can't understand, you know, the reasons that things should change. And that's due to their ignorance, due to their blindness. And there again, the response should be to have compassion. You know, if we get angry and irritated at them and kind of just belittle them for not understanding, that's going to make them more entrenched and more resistant to change. So you really have to have compassion and then try to meet people where they're at, you know? Try to think from their point of view. You know, what are they seeing about the situation? What is causing their resistance? You know, try to imagine what it's like to be that person, you know, get in their shoes. And compassion helps to do that. You know, if you're compassionate for someone, it's very easy to imagine what it's like to be them. If you're annoyed with someone, the last thing you want to do is try to feel close to that person, and in a way that you feel like even, you know, you imagine what it's like to be them, right? There's no bridge of connection. So based on compassion, then you really try to imagine, you know, what that person's state is, what their condition in life is, what their state of mind is, what their outlook, what their view is. And then that can give you insight into approaching the person, you know, and helping them take baby steps to change. Approaching the person in a way that they can see advantages to just beginning to change in the way that you think is appropriate. You know, if you just give the whole big idea right at the first, it might feel overwhelming. But if you give little kind of ways that they might start to change, then gradually you can lead them to the big change that you want, right? So that's all. Can you hear me?
Yes, I could hear you. That made a lot of sense. I'll follow what you said. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, good. Pema, are you guys recording today? I'm not sure.
Yes, Venerable. Yes, we are recording.
Okay.
Yeah, Venerable. There's a question which from Facebook, we forwarded to you from Jovi. Not on WhatsApp, on Zoom.
Okay. You know what? I don't know what I did to my screen here. Somehow I messed it up. You know what? I've been sharing my screen the whole time, have I?
Oh, okay. Should I read the questions for you?
No, I've got it now. I didn't realize, I think I was on share screen still the whole time. Oh, I can see now.
Okay.
Let's see. Is it this one? Emptiness of phenomena other than a person? Is that what you're saying, Pema?
Yes, Venerable.
Reply, message, as a person, reply, message, Jovi, NG.
Sorry. That's we copied it from Facebook. That's why it's showing like that.
Okay, other empty means emptiness of phenomena other than self. Okay, I mean, yeah. Not a very clear question, but I'll do my best. Emptiness of phenomena other than a person. So that's a statement, that's not a question. But because you put a question mark, I'll interpret it as a question. Emptiness of phenomena. So there's two kinds of emptiness, right? This is Gelug presentation. According to middle way consequentialist. There's emptiness of person, emptiness of phenomena. Emptiness of a person is when the basis, so the thing that is being asserted to not exist, right? The thing that is empty of is the same. It's inherent existence. That's what's being negated. But the basis for that negation is different. So meaning, when you look at a person, yourself or another person, and you realize that they are empty of inherent existence, or that person's quality of being empty of inherent existence is the selflessness of person, right? Or it's, you can say, yeah, it's the selflessness of person. Whereas you look at something other than a person, like I'll use my mug again, because I like my mug a lot, it's right here. So my mug, it's not a person, is it? No, I'm a person, my mug is not a person. My mug's emptiness of inherent existence is a selflessness of phenomena, right? So in that term, selflessness of phenomena, it just means phenomena other than a person, right? So any phenomena other than a person, its quality of being not inherently existent is selflessness of phenomena. Any person, their quality of being empty of inherent existence is a selflessness of person, right? So other empty means emptiness of phenomena other than, so other empty, yeah, again, other empty is not really something discussed in the Gelugpa tradition. So His Holiness was saying, he was interpreting in the Jonangpa tradition, where that's a prominent view. So other empty means it's something completely different, right? Other empty means like I was saying, empty of an other conventional phenomenon. So like my mug, it's a conventional phenomena. My mug is empty of being a mouse. Look, there's my mouse, computer mouse, not the animal. So my mug is empty of being a mouse. That is one quality of the mug. It's a property of the mug. It's not a mouse, it's not a computer, it's not a hand, it's not a person. So all those things, a mouse, a hand, a computer, they're all conventional phenomena other than the mug. So the mug's property of being empty, of being those phenomena, is other empty, right? That's other empty. Whereas self-empty is the mug's own quality of being empty of inherent existence. So inherent existence is something that does not exist at all. So it's not a phenomena. It's not that inherent existence is not a conventional phenomena other than the mug, right? Because it's not a conventional phenomena. It's not an ultimate phenomena. It's just a non-existent phenomena. So the mug's emptiness of inherent existence is the mug's ultimate nature, and that is called its self-empty. So this is according to Jonangpa school, according to His Holiness Dalai Lama's interpretation. Okay, so now there's one more question here, I think, yeah. How does verse 18 show how dependent arising destroys the two extreme views? His Holiness seems to have quoted the Heart Sutra too. Yeah, I didn't get to all the things His Holiness quoted, and thank you so much for this question. This is exactly the kind of question I'm longing for. So I'll share my screen again and we'll look at verse 18. Okay. Verse 18. You can see my screen, right? Yes, I think so. That there is no intrinsic existence at all, and that all functions as this arising in dependence on that. What need is there to say that these two converge without conflict? Well, I mean, to answer your question, I mean, there's many verses that are showing some of the other verses much better. That let me look at your question again. All right, stop share. That intrinsic existence clears away the two extreme views. So how does verse 18 show how dependent arising destroys the two extreme views? Okay, so you're specific on that. And His Holiness seems to have quoted the Heart Sutra too. I'm not sure His Holiness quoted the Heart Sutra today. He did yesterday. So, okay, so verse 18. So first of all, what are the two extreme views? The view of nihilism, that nothing exists, and the view of permanence. So here, permanence means that things inherently exist, right? Or that when you search for things, that you can find, when you search for things with the ultimate analysis, under the ultimate analysis, trying to find ultimately what they are, that you can find some essential thing, right? That you can, and that means you can find something existing from the side of the object. So that is the extreme of permanence, which means inherent existence. So those are the two extremes: the extreme of nihilism and the extreme of permanence. So how does the reasoning of dependent arising clear those two extremes away? So yeah, I mentioned this yesterday because it's explained also in verses 5 and 6. Whatsoever depends on conditions, that is devoid of inherent intrinsic existence. What excellent instruction can there be more amazing than this? By grasping at it, the childish strengthen bondage to extreme views. For the wise, this very fact is the doorway to cut free the net of elaborations. So that view of dependent arising clears away the extreme views. So how does verse 18 relate to that? That there is no intrinsic existence at all. So, right? So this is the view of permanence, and that all things function as this arising in dependence upon that. What need is there to say that these two converge without conflict? Okay, so dependent arising is saying that the way things exist is that they depend upon causes and conditions. Sorry, I'll show you. I'll appear again. So the way things exist is that they depend upon other things than them, right? Say like, let's go back to my mug. So this is a clay mug. So what is it? It exists in dependence upon what? Upon the clay that was shaped into the mug, upon the potting wheel, upon the potter, upon the colors used for the enamel, upon the kiln that was used to bake it, upon the concepts of the person who thought, I'll make a mug, and the food that they ate, and upon the potter's parents, and their parents, and their parents, and upon planet Earth, and upon the Big Bang, and so many things. There's no end to the chain of causes which have given rise to this mug, right? So that's an example of, so this mug is dependent upon causes and conditions. Also, it has parts. This handle is part of the mug, the little knobby thing on top of the handle, the color, the sides, the bottom. None of those things are the mug. They're all parts of the mug. So this mug is dependent upon parts. Also, it being a mug is dependent upon a person, someone who uses it as a mug, right? If there's nobody who used it, if nobody had the concept of mug, then it wouldn't be a mug, right? How could you say it's a mug? It could just be like, I don't know, a small table that's upside down or something. I don't know. So, or it could be a pen holder. If I started putting pens in it and set it on my desk, then it becomes a pen holder. Right now, it's not a pen holder, right? I drink out of it. But you could become a pen holder. Who knows? It's like a mystery. So it's dependent upon mental imputation, right? Of mind imputing it as a mug or imputing it as a pen holder. Right. So, yeah. So, but the fact that it's a dependent arising entails that it exists, right? So because by seeing that something is a dependent arising, indirectly, you're proving that that thing exists. And thereby, you're eliminating the extreme of nihilism, right? So when you see that something is dependent arising, first of all, you recognize that it exists. So it's not the case that it's non-existent, right? You eliminate nihilism. Secondly, you prove that the thing does not exist by its own power or from its own side, and thereby you eliminate the extreme of inherent existence, right? So that's how, I mean, that is the essential thing to understand about this whole prayer. I mean, this whole text in Praise of Dependent Origination. That is the main point right there. So I don't know, do we have another question? You guys don't have many questions. I told you yesterday, didn't I? I'm gonna tease you. I told you yesterday, did you watch His Holiness teaching this morning? I said yesterday, when you watch His Holiness teaching tomorrow, keep with you paper and pen. And if there's anything you don't understand, write it down and ask me. But nobody has questions. So I'm inferring either you didn't watch His Holiness teach this morning, or when you did, you understood everything, which I find difficult to believe, or that when questions arose, you quickly forgot them, which is probably most likely. Anyway, tomorrow His Holiness is teaching again from 9 to 10:30, so make sure you have paper and pen, or at least you have a little note-keeping app on your phone, and when a question arises in your mind, His Holiness says something, you think, I don't understand that, then write it down and ask tomorrow. Okay, so there's another question here in the chat. Good, my teasing is working. So this leads to verse 13 and 14, that nothing exists without an observer. I didn't really catch His Holiness' explanation due to my obscurations. Can you explain? Yes, I will try. Verse 13 and 14. So let's go back to the text. Okay. Difficult time getting this. Okay. 13, 14. Therefore, in your teaching, so verse 13. Therefore, in your teaching, seeing dependent origination is hailed. That too, not as an utter non-existence, not as intrinsic existence, right? So there's the two extremes. Not as an utter non-existence, not as intrinsic existence. The non-contingent is like a sky flower. So the non-contingent here means something that does not depend upon anything else. So like a sky flower, I mean, when you look up in the sky, do you see flowers growing in the sky? No. A sky flower is an example of a non-existent thing. So it's saying, I mean, indirectly, it's saying everything that exists depends upon other things, is a dependent origination. The thing which is not contingent, or the thing which is not dependent upon something else, is, you know, I came up with the example the other day of, you know, a herd of pigs flying through the sky at supersonic speed. You know, it's a little more clear. It does not exist. So things which do not depend upon anything else, either depend upon causes and conditions, or depend upon parts, or depend upon mental imputation, such a thing does not exist. Okay, so hence there is nothing that is not dependent, right? That's what I just said. The non-contingent is like a sky flower. Hence there is nothing that is not dependent. If things exist through their essence, their dependence on causes and conditions for their existence is a contradiction. So that means, for example, we go back to my mug. Wow, my mug is becoming famous. It's got 20 viewers here on Zoom. Who knows how many on Facebook? Don't get arrogant, little mug, okay? So that my mug is, it depends upon causes and conditions. Remember I mentioned the clay, the potter, the kiln. So imagine we try to imagine the opposite. So when we're negating inherent existence, it's very important to get an idea of what does inherent existence mean. That's usually our big slip up. We don't really imagine what that means. It takes an extension of our imagination. Just like in relation to Tracer's question, I was saying how, you know, when you're trying to change other people, when you're trying to deal with other people and it's difficult, it's really important to try to get inside their mind, come to where they are, imagine how they see the world. And that's a little difficult. It requires some effort, it requires imagination. So when it's the same when we're imagine well, when we're thinking about negating inherent existence, we have to think carefully, what would the world be like if things inherently existed? So just start with the mug. What would this mug be like if it inherently existed? So in this prayer, we'll just jump back, because I love jumping back between screen share and not. So in this verse 14, if things exist through their own essence, so that means if things inherently exist, their dependence on causes and conditions for their existence is a contradiction, right? So what does that mean? If things, what does it say? I want to use the exact words again. If things exist through their essence, right? If things exist through their essence, it means, so if this mug existed through its own essence, it means that there's something, you know, essential about this thing, that it is a mug, right? And that, so when you search for that essential thing that is its mugness or its mug, that you can find something here, you know, in the object. So it means that this mug has like an essence that does not depend upon clay. It does not depend upon a kiln. It does not depend upon a potter. It doesn't depend upon having a handle. It doesn't depend upon the bottom. So it doesn't depend on anything that is not mug, right? If this mug has an essential mugness, if there's something essential here, which is the mug, that, and it inherently exists, that thing, it does not depend upon anything that is not mug, right? So it cannot depend upon a handle, because a handle is not mug. It cannot depend upon a rim, because the rim is not the mug. It cannot depend upon a bottom, because the bottom is not the mug. It cannot depend upon clay, because clay is not a mug. Even the clay that was used to make this mug, that is something other than this mug, something different. So that essential, if there was such an essential mug, then when you search for it, you should be able to find this thing, you know, that from beginningless time and now and hereafter, it is mug. It will always be mug, you know. So, but the fact is, you cannot find. When you look, you investigate to find what exactly is the mug. All you find is a collection of things, even down to the level of the atoms. You find a collection of things which are not mug. Therefore, the consequentialist, Lama Tsongkhapa, is saying here, the mug has no essential reality, right? When you search for it, you cannot find anything that is essentially mug. You cannot find this inherently existent mug. You cannot find this mug that is a mug from its own side, right? Remember, it is a mug merely because of independence upon causes and conditions, independence upon parts, and independence upon someone using it as a mug. Remember, if I start using it as a pen holder, it's not a mug anymore, right? It's a pen holder. Similarly, it may be more effective for our minds. I could take the pen holder. I don't have with me, but I have a nice pen holder on my table. I could take that pen holder and wash it out nicely and start drinking out of it. And then it becomes a mug. Magic, you know? So the thing being a mug or being a pen holder, it's entirely dependent upon someone using it in that way and the concepts that we associate with that. So, so that's why if things exist through their own essence, then their dependence upon causes and conditions for their existence is a contradiction, right? So another way of saying that is that if things exist by their own essence, then to be what they are, they don't need to depend upon anything else, right? And as soon as they depend upon something else, as soon as they depend upon causes and conditions for becoming what they are, then they do not exist by their own power. They do not exist by their own side. They exist through the power of other things, right? So it's, I mean, that's really, again, that's kind of the essence of what we need to think about. How is it that things depending upon causes and conditions, things depending upon parts, and things depending upon imputation for their existing in the way they do, how is that contradictory with inherent existence? We have to think about that again and again and again until, so here maybe, because I mean my time is already way up, but I'll come to this verse that His Holiness quoted today in the midst of explaining, towards the end of explaining the Praise of Dependent Origination. So this is from another prayer by Tsongkhapa, the three principal aspects of the path. And this is the second from the last verse in that prayer. And it really gives the particular special quality of the Prasangika view, right? And it really relates directly to what we're talking about. Furthermore, appearance eliminates the extreme of existence. And emptiness eliminates the extreme of non-existence. If you realize how emptiness manifests in the manner of cause and effect, there's an extra space there, cause and effect, then you are not captivated by wrong notions holding extreme views, right? So this verse is very special because it's very counterintuitive. Furthermore, appearance eliminates, so appearance, think things arising, so the first line, appearance eliminates the extreme of existence, right? So why is it counterintuitive? Because remember, appearance means, okay, things appear. You know, the mug appears, the mouse appears, the rain appears, you know, all the ordinary things we see and taste and touch and think about. All these things appear. So it would seem like, okay, because those things appear, then it means that there's no nihilism. It means that things do exist, right? So the appearance of things, the natural way to think about it would be the appearance of things eliminates the extreme of nihilism. Because I can see things appearing, then I know that nihilism is not the case, that things do exist. So that's true. But in this special interpretation of the Prasangika is that the way things appear, not only the fact that things appear, but the way they appear in the way that they're changing moment by moment. They appear in a way that they're produced by things. You know, I know when I see the mug, I know that it didn't just appear, you know, just like emerge out of thin air. It was, you know, someone had to dig the clay, someone had to shape it into a mug, someone had to bake it. When I see me or other people, I know I just didn't, you know, appear in a flash out of thin air. But, you know, I eat food every day and that becomes my body. My body was produced from my parents. I breathe air, I drink water. So the way I exist, the way other things exist is independent upon causes and conditions. So that knowledge of the way things appear as things that are changing moment by moment, as things that are produced by moment, causes and conditions, that recognition of their dependent origination, it dispels the extreme of existence. So what is the extreme of existence? The extreme of existence is inherent existence, right? So this is what I'm talking about. We have to think again and again how things existing in dependence upon things that are not them, how things exist through the power of concepts, through the power of parts, through the power of causes and conditions. That the way they exist, but as soon as we see that, it should dispel this habitual tendency we have to think things exist from their own side, by their own power, right? So things exist through seeing how things exist through the power of things, of other things that are not them. It should dispel this view that things exist by their own power. You know, existing to the power of other things and existing by its own power are opposite, right? So that's this first line. Furthermore, appearance eliminates the extreme of existence, and emptiness eliminates the extreme of non-existence. So again, this seems the second line seems very counterintuitive. Emptiness eliminates the extreme of non-existence. So ordinarily we would think, oh, emptiness, it eliminates the extreme of existence, because empty means empty of something. It means empty means that something does not exist. So in one way that's true. But here, emptiness eliminates the extreme of non-existence. So to understand that, we have to go one step beyond emptiness. So let's go back to the mug. The mug is empty of inherent existence. So the fact that the mug is empty of inherent existence, you know, that emptiness of inherent existence of the mug, it exists in dependence upon a basis. You know, if this, and its basis is this mug. If this mug did not exist, then this mug's emptiness of inherent existence also would not exist, right? It could not exist. So I mean, what is emptiness? You know, when we think emptiness and emptiness of inherent existence, you know, it's like, what is, it's just a general notion. It's a general term. But the existence of that general thing depends upon specific instances of it. So take an example. What is human being? Just think, human being. You know, it's a general class of creatures. We are human beings, so there's this general class. So if I ask you, well, find me human being, you know, can you point? Where does human being live? What does human being look like? Is human being a man or a woman? You cannot answer, right? Because human being actually, it does not exist inherently. It's just a term used to apply to a bunch of instances. You know, you are all human beings. I'm a human being. So I can point to a human being, but I can't point to human being and say, you know, I can, with regard to, okay, I'm going way over here, but it's okay. You guys are still with me, so I guess it's okay. Pema's not jumping in saying, Venerable Legtsok, what are you doing? So if we ask like this specific human being, are they a man or a woman? We can answer, you know, but human being, we cannot. So, yeah, so for human being to exist, it depends upon specific instances of human being, okay? That's clear. Similarly, emptiness. Emptiness is a general term for a whole class, you know, a whole class of phenomena. There's the emptiness of inherent existence of this mug. There's the emptiness of inherent existence of this thing. There's the emptiness of inherent existence of my pen. So any instance of emptiness of inherent existence depends upon something which is not it, right? The emptiness of inherent existence of the mug depends upon the mug. The emptiness of inherent existence of the pen depends upon the pen. Emptiness of inherent existence in general depends upon all those specific instances of emptiness of inherent existence. And all of those are objects of knowledge, are things which are known by a mind. So they depend upon being known by a mind, which knows them. So in that way, when we realize that emptiness is also a dependent arising, then that eliminates the extreme of non-existence, because it means that not only does emptiness itself exist, its basis, you know, all its parts and its basis also exist. Thereby, we eliminate the extreme of non-existence. So that's what that second line says. And emptiness eliminates the extreme of non-existence. If you realize how emptiness manifests in the manner of cause and effect. I'm not sure the word manifest is quite a good translation. I'm trying to think of the Tibetan. Anyway, we should stop. Maybe I can think about it, come back to you. Shouldn't this verse? Okay. Yeah. Okay, there's one question here in the chat. Okay, perfect. Someone has my private WhatsApp number. They sent me a question, and they were saying exactly what I'm just explaining. They were saying, look at this verse again. Shouldn't this verse say? When I remember when I first learned about this verse and was using it back in 1999 at Tushita, actually. I remember I was doing a retreat with some other in a group, and someone in the group said exactly what this person was saying to me in WhatsApp. They were saying, shouldn't this first line read, furthermore, appearance eliminates the extreme of non-existence? And shouldn't the second line read, and emptiness eliminates the extreme of existence, right? Someone, I mean, this person now, this person then, they totally thought that this is just a typo. Someone made a typo in the prayer, like it's wrong. But no, this is, I mean, that's why it's a really profound meaning it's pointing out in that prayer. And to get at the meaning, you have to think like to the second step. You know, the meaning isn't just right there on the surface. So it's just like I explained. Okay, that's all. We should stop there. Otherwise, you know, other people in the world are going to miss us. No? And you'll get tired and you won't want to come back tomorrow. Okay, so thank you all. Pamela, do you want to say anything at the end? I don't see you here.
Thank you, Venerable. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we see you all tomorrow again at the same time. And if anybody missed the review session yesterday, then it's there on, uploaded on our YouTube. So the link is there on our website. So you can listen to the recordings, and see you all tomorrow. Thank you so much. Thank you, Venerable.
You're welcome. Okay, bye-bye, everyone. Remember, questions tomorrow.